Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at the second volume of Alack Center comics put out by Euro Comics, The Age of Disenchantment. When I did volume 1, I wasn't so sure that I was going to record a review of volume 2. I felt like I had pretty much said everything I needed to say about it, and I was just going to enjoy volume 2 as a read. But then that video got a lot of really positive reactions, and also people seem to be really surprised that I had been able to get a copy of it. I don't know if that scarcity applies to volume 2, so maybe this video won't be as interesting to people because more people have this book already. But anyways, I enjoyed it. There was still a lot of cool stuff worthy to talk about. And since people seem to really appreciate the last one, I figured I'd go ahead and do this one as well. So we'll jump in. This is a collection of a number of different stories. So I'm making like 1 or 2 notes per story, just to point out like evolution of style, things that were interesting to me, bits of writing I liked. I don't really want to explain each story or anything. One of the most interesting things, besides the obvious visual appeal of Munoz's style, is that his storytelling really jumps out at me as being so smartly planned. And it seems like something that he's putting in as the artist that's maybe not even in the writing. He's able to add these sub stories and have characters cycle in interesting ways. And it's something I've always previously associated with Eduardo Hizo, like is his work in 100 Bullets did a lot. And now it's pretty obvious to me where he got that from, because it's pretty obvious that his art style takes a lot of influence from these books as well. So I wanted to go through this opening sequence here and really show some of the things that I think are so wonderful in what Munoz is doing. So you get a very abstract composition here where you're too close onto this like lamp that this flying up to, and then a little bit of something where you can actually recognize totally what's going on. You have a photograph of Alack and his partner Cheryl, and you get a little bit of his Z's there. So you get everything you need, but it's abstract enough you kind of have to work for it. We start to pull back out and you see a little bit more. You have the cigarette there. You have the photograph again here as a threading element to tie. Now you get Alack introduced with his snoring. Then the cigarette comes back in as he picks it up. Really interesting camera choice here to go like this is looking up his nose, and then this is like looking from the top of his head past his nose. Then come back and get like a more of establishing shot where Alack's up as he's listening to this message, and this is where you really get that strategy that Hizo will do that I now know. Like I don't know if it came from somewhere before Munoz, but this is the earliest I can think of that I've seen this strategy. Is now while the dialogue continues, instead of just staying in the room, so just showing like this guy making his coffee, which is boring, we get to see some other characters who are going to be important, and we get this little like visual subplot that plays out without really having anything to do with the dialogue here. So you have this pointing to the window. That's obviously where Alack is at, and this is going on outside. And we get introduced to these two characters. So the dialogue becomes the threading moment, which is cool because I've always thought more about threading as a visual thing. So we come outside, we see these two guys. One has glasses, one's got the scarf and the cap on, and the kids are going to throw a snowball. Now we can jump back and forth between inside and outside without having the dialogue run, because they've established the connection between that. Munoz has established where everyone's at. And usually when you get in an establishing shot, it's not establishing people inside and outside. So I think that's also really, really powerful trick to recognize, that you can establish more than just what's actually in the picture, depending on which order you do it in. So then we can come back inside, and Alack's just making coffee. Outside, the guys are getting hit in the face. Inside, Alack's drinking the coffee. Here now we've seen the guys, cleaning themselves off. Alack now is coming downstairs. Here's the guys as they put their hat back on. They're still wiping their shirt off. And then you see Alack opened the door, and now those two tangential narratives merge. They bang into each other, and you see the characters walking by here while Alack comes out the door. Then there's some really, really great like visual rhythms that help the storytelling in here as well. So you have Alack come out with the umbrella. These guys move past him. We're seeing them from the front. We're seeing him from the side. Then we move to seeing Alack from the front. And this is another trick Munoz does a lot. He puts the most important character in the scene, the people who are talking, he'll put them in the background, very small, and make them a focal point just by wedging them out. Like normally the main character would be someone up front, but here, because they're like wedged in the V and there's dialogue there to lead you to them, you get these guys in the background being one focal point, and then he lets you kind of have two other focal points as you look at Alack buying the paper and this lady here. Then we can flip to the other side now, because we've established that they've got their backs to each other. Now we can see Alack from behind, and you see the umbrella has been closed right there, and it's kind of leaning this way. We get to see the guys from the front. We also have this interesting thing here. Now we have a time jump, so Alack is the threading element, but now we have Alack from the front and Alack from the front. And here he's hiding behind this newspaper, but the text draws you to it, and you get a little reminder that that's him visually. And then when you jump over to this panel and he's getting off the train, you get a reminder of his silhouette from the back. So you see the cap, the coat, the little bit of hair, and the umbrella opening. And this character kind of plays like the same framing that this one does in terms of composition. And you have that, and you have a pretty similar in terms of eye and whatnot. So it's really sophisticated storytelling, really sophisticated composition, and really interesting tricks I've never thought of before by making these kind of visual echoes throughout a composition like that to help aid the reader. This is especially important because Munoz in this volume already has a very abstract, exaggerated style. He's pushing that further and further the older he gets, it looks like. And these kinds of things become very important for letting the reader kind of catch on as things get stranger and stranger to look at. So this story here is, as you saw from the title page, called Nicaragua. This is about Alack and his partner Cheryl down messing about. Actually, no, I think Cheryl is his kid. Sorry. He's down there and accidentally getting involved in some Nicaraguan politics. Some of the images in here, you can see the abstraction is pretty wild, and so the images can get kind of cluttered. It's not like it's not pleasing to look at. It just slows you down. It's not like a Chris Ware thing where you could just breeze through the book. So sometimes it's a little bit more distressing. Like I found this panel a little hard to look at. It feels very Guernica. I would think that a lot of these compositional strategies are probably coming from that visual legacy. And then also on this page, there's just this interesting return of a motif of these kids still playing with the snowball. So some of these subplots that aren't even really part of the major story, there's just these sub-stories that give a sense of place. You get the sense that those things are still going on the entire time you're reading the story. And that way of establishing a whole world that a character is moving through, where the reader can trust that the mechanisms of the world are still like all the non-playable characters are still doing stuff, you know? I think that's a really fascinating way to do comics. Another one of these really awesome pieces of composition that allows Munoz to flip a camera. So in these two panels here, we have a V shape set up just by the perspective and the height of the characters' heads and stuff. So that again brings these focal points down to the characters in the back. Like in this one, Alack is in the back, and the woman, maybe it is Cheryl, I'm forgetting the names, I'm sorry. Cheryl sitting next to him, his partner, and then his daughter's there. But the woman is talking, and so you get brought to her, even though this guy here, the person that she's talking about, Jorge, is the focus of the thing. Then the camera flips, and that character now, who's a very distinctive character, he's in the back. the person sitting next to him is saying something, so our attention's drawn to that. We also get an announcer, and then we have Alack's daughter here talking as well. And you see all of them just in reverse. And I think that's, and then doing that on that V to keep everyone focused here, I think is just really superb comics, really superb storytelling. Here's another example of the really wild abstractions really mimicking what looks like images out of Guernica. And obviously that would be on topic. In the story, the North Americas, you get some really pared down, like late Frank Miller-esque type of almost iconic imagery here, where you're working with such little detail that the things just become like graphic design. And then some really cool texture play here, where it looks like he's inking with a razor or maybe like a sponge brush. Most of the time when I look at Munoz's art, it's so starkly tenebristic with the blacks and the whites right next to each other, and the lines are all thick, that I'm never really worried that anything's being lost in reproduction. And even though he uses dry brush, it seems to end pretty quickly. But when I see something like this, where he's obviously working with a more textured approach, then I wonder how much is actually being lost of his dry brush work, because there's obviously a lot of loss here. I think his style is just, because it is so tenebristic, any loss that happens will kind of go unnoticed because it fits in with the style. But there is a suggestion to me in places that some of the like really fine details are being lost, but you would never guess that unless you see an image like that other one. Sean and I have already talked about this story. This is called Over Some Drawings. It's a response from Munoz and Sampayo to the accusations against Keith Giffen for stealing a lot of Munoz's artwork and basically straight up tracing them. If you want to know more about that story, you can go watch that video. We'll put a link to it in here somewhere. I should go like this, not like at the camera. We'll put a link to it up here somewhere. But basically, this is now, the story is playing that out, where an artist from South America is coming and accusing a North American artist of stealing his style and his money and his soul and all of that kind of stuff. So, fun story. They mentioned very specifically 342 examples, so I wonder if that's an actual number that Munoz actually went and got a bunch of Keith Giffen's work and like found as many of his drawings as he could, or if they're just putting that in there. But anyways, that's that story. You can go watch the video on it. The next story is called Hostages, and it's obviously about people being taken hostage. This drawing here, I really like this drawing. The exaggeration in it, the way he drew the arm. This is another area where I could see some maybe loss of texture in the artwork. But also wondering, like, if this drawing got put out today, would that be seen as like too racist of a caricature? I know, talking to Brandon, he took some heat for a cover that was put out, I guess, by an artist that's from, I believe, like somewhere in India. And they were very mad about people were very mad about the way that the character was drawn. So I wonder, like, if that's something now that feels dated to some people. I think it's a great cartoon drawing. Like I said, the arm is wonderful. There's a story called The End of the Road. It looks like he's having, it says Anahuaca memory, but I wonder if this is like ayahuasca, because there's definitely, obviously, a very psychedelic element to this. I like seeing, as much as I like seeing the gritty noir detective stuff in this style, I do like seeing Munoz be able to go more symbolic and push things more to the abstract, because that does really fit his art style, which is so based on shape. And it's nice to see him have a chance to kind of flex some different muscles. This story here is from 1999. We have a character that's aging in real time. I don't remember off the top of my head when the original stories were done, but you have a character who's grown up, gotten to be like an old man and is aging. And in this story, Alack's daughter Cheryl is now grown up and put in jail as well. Some really awesome. This almost reminds me of like Antoine Coste took this and now has turned that kind of softer version of Munoz's work into its whole own style. But just really lovely calligraphically designed images there. Using hard edges versus these soft textured edges is a really inspirational idea to me. That's a very painterly technique, but he's doing it in the stark graphic ink. It's another one of those moments where I wonder if we aren't getting some loss of the specifics of that, but I doubt it's very much. And you can see some more where he's really pushing the composition. Some more of these where it looks like it's being drawn with a brush or something on a very, very toothy, like watercolor paper. And yeah, it's a really someone who already had a very particular exaggerated style. Continuing to find ways to push it a little bit further is really interesting to me. There's a story in here about a comic artist who like traps a woman, given the fact this artist's name I think is Elaine, and he traps a woman named Tony. Given the fact that there's like this story that's kind of based in the real world, like animosity that they had against Keith Giffen for swiping the artwork. Like, I wonder, because it's so specific, to come back to comic artist again. I just wonder if this one's also based in some kind of industry rumor. And in volume one, like Munoz and Sampayo themselves were in the story talking about like real world comic politics stuff. So this one's very strange to me, and if anyone knows more about it, I would like to know. And the final story, which I'm assuming is the final Alack Center story, is a really powerful, potent one that was done after 9/11, and it's set start in August 11th, 2001, and basically ends with 9/11 happening, and it shows Alack kind of being accidentally involved in helping this play out. It's showing him trying to solve a case and get something for a client, but he's being used by forces to kind of move parts around. You get these scenes where the government is basically like in on the information that something's going to get to happen, and it really fits in with the revolutionary tenor of a lot of the stories in here. It seems that Sampayo has like left-wing revolutionary politics as one of his like life views as his bases for what he's writing stories about, and that all comes to play in this really kind of long, drawn-out, interesting story that like borders between a political thriller and like a crime noir. So really interesting also from that aspect of writing. And there's characters in here. I think like this is Donald Rumsfeld. I think you get Karl Rove and Dick Cheney and stuff in there in Munoz's style as well. So yeah, just as much or more to enjoy about Volume 2. It sounds like maybe Volume 2 is easier to get a hold of. I apologize for putting out like the Lust Forced video. I didn't realize that Volume 1 was so hard to get a hold of. But for those of you who don't have these or can't get a hold of them, at least it'll give you a sense of what's in there. And if you do come across copies of either volume, I would highly recommend it. The Exile by Eric Creek is a gorgeously illustrated Viking saga of revenge. Eric Creek calls it his Viking Western. It's about a guy who's been away on the warpath and is returning home to some family troubles that have to be resolved. And this is told in just this amazing, like, kind of three-color art style that looks like old woodblock cuts or something. It's absolutely gorgeous book that you've got to pick up.